Oh, all right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining this evening for this volunteer lobby workshop and to learn about the legislature. My name is Sandy Barr, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director for Sierra Club's Green Canyon chapter, which is the Arizona chapter. I'm originally from Michigan, but live right here in central Phoenix on Akamal Atam and Peeposh lands. And I've worked for Sierra Club now for 28 years. Part of my job is lobbying and advocacy. I also do a lot of grassroots organizing, policy analysis, um, fundraising, and helping to manage staff. And in Sierra Club, we center our work on principles of equity, justice, and inclusion, and have both at our chapter level and at the national level adopted the HEMA's principles for democratic organizing. I won't read all of those to you, but you can read those for yourself, and I'm happy to share them with you later. But a key focus is being inclusive and building just relationships. Here's what we'll cover this evening. So I'm going to give an overview of Arizona government, just touch on the Arizona Corporation Commission. I have a whole other workshop on that, and then we'll take that deeper dive into the Arizona Legislature. We'll talk about the leadership and powers, how a bill becomes a law, how to do volunteer lobbying. I'll share some resources. I'll touch on requests to speak. We can do more with that if people need more, and a little bit about legislative updates. So, and then of course your questions. So let that person in. There we go. Okay, so we'll start out with a basic overview of Arizona government. I like to start with the basics so we all are on the same page. For some people, they did not have civics or government in high school. For others, it's been a while, or maybe you learned more about it in another state. And so I always like to try and give a little bit of an overview of how our government is here in Arizona. So we have 4 branches of government in Arizona: the usual, the executive, legislative, and judicial. But then we also have a 4th branch of government, the Corporation Commission. And, some people think of it as more of a state agency. It is a state agency, but it is also a branch of government. The executive branch is established in the Constitution in Article 5, and we have the governor, and I forgot to put her name, but that's Governor Katie Hobbs in the middle. And then Secretary of State is also part of the executive branch, State Treasurer, Attorney General, and Superintendent of Public Instruction. And so these are all considered part of the executive branch of government in Arizona. The governor's responsibilities and powers include approving or vetoing bills. Our governor does have a line item veto, so can go through and eliminate certain things in the budget without having to veto the whole budget. On the federal level, the president does not have that authority. They either have to veto the whole thing or sign it, but they don't get the option of line item vetoes. They call the legislature into special session to address specific issues. They deliver a State of the State address to the legislature each year. That's how the session kicks off, is the governor delivers the State of the State address, and then they're off for the session, off, doing things for the session. The governor also oversees state agencies like the Department of Environmental Quality, Department of Water Resources, Department of Transportation, etc. And they appoint individuals to boards and commissions. Some of those appointments require that the Senate approve them or concur. And of course, we know a lot about that as far as her directors and them not getting approved. But there also have been a lot of people on boards and commissions that haven't gotten approved by this legislature as well, by the Senate. So not all of them require that, but some of them do. Like the Game and Fish Commission, for example, the commissioners have to be approved by the Senate. And the governor also fills vacancies for offices that are not called out in the Constitution. So, for example, if a corporation commissioner resigns or is removed from office, the governor actually appoints the person to fill that vacancy. There's no like special election or anything for that. And speaking of the Corporation Commission, I just wanted to touch on that in this workshop because they are really important relative to what happens with energy and our energy bills in Arizona. It is established in Article 15 of the Constitution. We're one of 7 states that have constitutional utility commissions. And there are 5 commissioners that are elected. All 5 are currently Republicans, elected every 4 years. There will be 2 seats up in November 2026. Kevin Thompson, the chair, and Nick Myers, those 2 seats are up. And they are term limited, and their jurisdiction is over the quality of service and rates that utilities charge. They also regulate private water companies, facilitate business incorporation, and a number of other issues. But the main thing I wanted to get across is they set your utility rates unless you have SRP, and that's a whole other discussion. They determine, how much you're going to pay, and they clearly impact how much clean energy we have or will have. So the legislature has an important role, but so does this body. All right, let's get to the legislature. So the current legislature is the 57th legislature. So that's that's how many since statehood, right? 57, 2-year. Each legislature is 2 sessions. So you have the first regular session and the second regular session. And coming up in 2026 will be the 57th legislature's second regular session. In our state, we have 30 legislative districts and a bicameral legislature, just like most states, not all, but most, with the Senate and House of Representatives. There are 60 in the House. The breakdown is 33-27, with Republicans having the majority. And in the Senate, 17-13 Republican majority with 30 senators total. The leadership in the Arizona legislature has quite a bit of power. The Speaker of the House is Steve Montenegro, and he's from Litchfield Park and does political consulting. Senate President Warren Peterson is from Gilbert and is in the real estate business. And I would say particularly with Senator Warren Peterson, you can kind of tell his background is in real estate and that he has certain biases because of that. Like I said, these two individuals have a lot of power and a lot of control over what happens in the legislature. And both of them are elected by the members of their particular house. So, but they control the chambers, like, you know, whether something gets remodeled or not, how, you know, how people have access, all kinds of things. They sign all bills, acts that go through the process. They are the ones that decide what committees we will have and who will serve as the chair on those committees. They also appoint or they can remove people from committees. And they do that for, for both the majority and the minority. The minority party, the Democrats right now, can make recommendations about who they want on committees, but that doesn't mean that the speaker or the Senate president has to do that. They generally do, but they don't have to. They decide when bills will be heard and which bills, and they also decide on all employment and personnel issues in the bodies, including whether or not people get raises. And again, that also means the minority party staff. And again, there's recommendations, but they don't have to necessarily abide by those. So yeah, they have a lot of influence and power on those two houses. And then we have the minority leadership, and they, as you might guess, have a lot less power in the legislature. Oscar de los Santos is the House Minority Leader from Phoenix. He works in the public policy arena. And then the Senate Minority Leader is Priya Sundaresan. She's from Tucson, and she's an attorney. Their power in the legislature usually comes from really trying to keep their caucus together so they can influence things, and then also like really knowing the rules of the legislature. But it really is a lot harder, as you might guess, for the minority leadership to influence how the process moves forward at the legislature. So if they can keep their caucus together, sometimes they can help stop bills or delay, or, you know, at least make it more difficult. And then Arizona is special in a way. There are other states that have citizen initiatives and referenda, but our state, because we became a state during the progressive era, we have a pretty progressive constitution, and it allows us to initiate laws and to stop laws by gathering signatures from the voters of Arizona. And not all states have this. Some states only allow initiatives for constitutional amendments, but we have pretty broad authority for direct democracy. The legislature is always trying to narrow that authority because indeed this process is a check on the power of the legislature. And so that is why they frequently are trying to make it more difficult for citizen initiatives or for the people to do a referendum. All right. Shifting gears slightly, we're going to talk now about how a bill becomes a law. And I'll try I'll try to add in, what really happens. There's the written, how a bill becomes a law, and then there's the rest of the story, so to speak. So I'll try to make sure I include that and not just, the basics. So in if you want a bill introduced in the Arizona legislature, no matter who you are, you need to have at least one sponsor, either in the House or the Senate. It doesn't matter which house it is. Bills don't have to start in a particular house. Like on the federal level, money bills have to start in the House of Representatives. That is not the case in the Arizona legislature. The budget can start in either house. Sometimes they will pass bills in both houses and pass the exact same bill and then just swap them out at the end. So there are a lot of different ways it can happen. There is a body of lawyers at the legislature called the Legislative Council that makes sure bills are written in the proper form. So if you have an idea for a bill and you take it to your legislator and they say, yeah, I'm really interested in it, the Legislative Council would be the body that would help make sure it was written up properly. And you can have one legislator introduce a bill, or you could actually have the whole body introduce a bill, which happens sometimes on resolutions. It is true that most bills come from lobbyists, but again, anyone can ask to have one introduced. It just doesn't, you just need to find a willing legislator. Once a bill gets introduced, the clerk assigns a number to it. So all bills will have numbers. The Senate bills all start with a 1. The House bills all start with a 2. So if you see a bill and it doesn't have HB for House bill in front of it or SB for Senate bill in front of it, you will know which is which, because a 1 would be the Senate and a 2 the House. So after they're introduced, the Speaker of the House or the Senate President assign them to a standing committee. And there are a number of standing committees in the legislature. They're established, again, by the House Speaker or the Senate President. And usually a bill is assigned to a committee where they deal with that topic. So like an energy bill would go to the Natural Resources, Energy, and Water Committee. And then all bills go to the clerk for printing and posting for distribution. They don't really print them too much anymore. They're mostly just posted on the legislature's website. So they've been assigned to a committee. A committee chair does not have to hear a bill. And as we go through this process, I'll try to highlight all the ways bills can die and how they can be revived. The first way is in that committee assignment that the House Speaker and Senate President do. If they assign it to like 3 committees, that pretty much assures that a bill will die, because there won't be enough time for it to get through the process. And it's usually a signal that they don't really like the bill. The next way it can die is for committee chairs just not to hear the bill. They, it's assigned, but they just never put it on an agenda. Representative Gail Griffin, who chairs the House Natural Resources, Energy, and Water Committee, is well known for making sure no water bills will get heard in her committee that would actually do anything to address water issues. So, you know, and she stops a lot of other good legislation too. But that's you know, that's another way a bill can die. If they hear the bill, they don't have to actually take public testimony in committee, but most of the committees do. So this is one of the places where you can be engaged and provide public testimony in a committee on a bill. If the bill passes out of the standing committee, it then would go to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee looks and says, is this bill constitutional? Does it need technical amendments? And sometimes the Rules Committee just kills bills. It does, they, you know, it's kind of a gatekeeper. And sometimes the Rules Committees pass bills that are clearly unconstitutional. And, you know, the rules attorneys will tell them that, but they go ahead and do it. Just like pretty much everything in the process, there's a lot of politics involved. If the standing committee defeats a bill, that bill will be dead for now, but there are ways to bring it back. So I'll touch on that a little bit further along. And I mentioned this already, but the standing committees, that is a key opportunity for public input. You can sign up through this request to speak system, and I'll show you a little bit more about that a little later. But the name is a little bit misleading. You can sign up through the request to speak system, but you don't have to speak. You can just register your support or opposition for a bill, even if you don't want to speak. If you do want to speak, then you would say, yes, I want to speak, and you could testify in a committee. This gives you a little picture of what it looks like when people are testifying. It can be a little bit intimidating because, you know, they're up higher and you're there, but I always encourage people to try it. I think it's very empowering to use your voice in these committees, and you know, it does make a difference. You can also make arrangements to talk to individual legislators before the committee starts. Sometimes you can catch legislators in the hallway before committee, or even when you go into the room. You're not supposed to go up where they are, but, you know, if you know them, you can wave and they can come over and talk to you. You can send in written comments, and then, like I said, you can also deliver testimony in these committees. So I've been talking about ways that bills die. I want to mention a way they can be resurrected. One of those ways is through what's called a strike everything amendment. And this is where they take basically any bill they want and amend it by striking all of the existing bill and replacing it with a brand new bill. And it keeps the same number, but it's a new bill, and it can be super confusing. Sometimes you'll see bills introduced that say they're technical corrections bills. A lot of those bills are just introduced in order to for the bill sponsor to be able to do a strike everything amendment later. So we've seen a lot of controversial bills come up through strike everything amendments. For example, this last session, the bill to give the utilities liability relief for wildfires that their infrastructure starts, that was done through a strike everything amendment. So none of us saw the language for the bill until just a couple days before it was heard in committee. So it's pretty, I don't think it's a very good tool because I think it is super unfriendly to the public. It's really hard enough if you're someone that is following it day to day, but if you're the average member of the public, it makes it super confusing. After a bill goes through the Rules Committee, it then is referred to what you'll hear referred to as COW, or Committee of the Whole. And the legislature is filled with acronyms, so I try to define them and before using them, but if I miss one, let me know. And before, so it's referred to Committee of the Whole, but before they actually address it in Committee of the Whole, there's an informal part of the process where the Democrats all get together and talk about the bills that are coming to the floor, and then the Republicans all get together separately and talk about it. The caucuses are usually open to the public, and in the House anyway, you can watch them online. In the Senate, you really can't. Again, the Speaker and the Senate President decide when and which bills go to Committee of the Whole. And that the Committee of the Whole is the entire House and the entire Senate. They debate, they adopt amendments, they adopt the amendments from committees, they can have floor amendments. Usually everything is done on a voice vote, but if someone questions that a bill passed and asks for then they call division, and then they do a standing vote. And then if it looks like the bill is actually going to fail in Committee of the Whole, they'll do a recorded vote. And they now have time limits in the House on how long people can talk about bills. So then we got to what is usually the last part of the process in committee or in each body, and that's the third reading of a bill. And this is the recorded vote. Again, the entire body is voting. There is not supposed to be debate on third reading. They can do vote explanation. And again, there are limits on vote explanation in the House now. But sometimes you'll hear what amounts to debate as one person explains their vote, and then someone else will get up and explain their vote, trying to counter what was just said. So it does become a little bit like that. Any bill to get out of the Senate or House on a third read has to have a majority of the body to pass. So that'd be 31 in the House and 16 in the Senate. There are also some bills that require supermajorities, 2/3 or even a 3/4 vote. If a bill is instituting a new tax or fee, it needs a 2/3 vote. If they're overriding a veto by the governor, it needs a 2/3 vote, and this is in each House. And if they want the bill to become law right when the governor signs it, that requires a 2/3 vote as well. It has an emergency clause. Bills that pass with an emergency clause are not subject to a referendum, so you couldn't use the referendum process to stop it from becoming law. And then to change a ballot measure, it requires a 3/4 vote in each House, and it must also further the purpose of the ballot measure. So even if they have a 3/4 vote, if they're trying to like, take away all the funding or eviscerate something, they can't do that. They can only do it if it furthers the purpose. So it passes on third read, and then it goes over to the other house, and the process is very similar in both houses. If it's a different form, then they can, if they pass it in a different form, then it has to go back to the original house where they can concur to the amendments that were made and then do a final vote. They can refuse they don't like the amendments that the other house made, and then it goes to conference committee. They decide on how to amend it, and then it goes back to each house for a final vote. They can change a lot of rules, but one solid rule is that a bill has to pass each house in the same form in order to go up to the governor, or if it's a referral, to go on the ballot. So they do have to figure out a way to work out differences if they want something to advance. And then it goes up to the governor, and the governor can sign, veto, and she can also allow a bill to become law without her signature. There is no pocket veto, so if she doesn't act, it will become law. All right, let me just double check on, oh yeah, we're doing okay. I think we have a few more minutes before our guests will join us. So I wanted to talk a little bit about becoming a volunteer lobbyist. I'm guessing a few of you already are, but the qualifications to be a volunteer lobbyist are not particularly, stringent. It's not like you have to have a you don't have to have a law degree or background in the law. You just want to have some passion for the issue that you're working on. I think that's super important. Know a bit about it, or be willing to learn about that particular issue, or if it's a process you're working on. And then a willingness to speak up on it, whether it is through what you write, or it's through what you say orally, or it's both, but a willingness to use your voice. There are a few do's and don'ts with volunteer lobbying and these are true of any kind of lobbying. And just for everyone's benefit too, lobbying is nothing more than advocacy. It's just that some people get paid to do it, and some people get paid a lot to do it. And I think it kind of has negative connotations for a lot of people, but lobbying really is just advocacy. So I just wanted to make that clear. So if you're wanting to meet with a legislator, one of the things I always recommend people do is make an appointment. If you just show up at the legislature, your legislators may meet with you, but a lot of times they will not, because they have other things going on. So I say, don't give them a reason to not meet with you. Make an appointment. Arrive 5 minutes early. They may be late, but it's important for you to be on time. If you're in a meeting with a legislator and they ask you a question and you don't know the answer to it, just say so. You are not expected to know the answer to everything. I feel like I always put this on this list because I feel like sometimes people get tripped up by this, and it's true when people are testifying in committee too. If you get asked a question, and may not even be a fair question, like I have been asked how much I make before in committee, like it's totally irrelevant. So, you don't have to answer every question, and always a fail safe with with something that you're not sure about is to say, well, I want to double check this, so I'll get back to you on it. Then there's no harm in that. You do want to then actually get back to them, though. Again, be honest. I think that is just a common sense thing, but don't try to answer something or like if you're unsure, again, don't just say something because you think it might be true. Double check it. You want to be cordial in these meetings, including to the legislators' assistants. They have a tough job. They're usually very nice people, and they can help you get appointments. They can help with follow-up, and just it's a good idea to be a nice person anyway. I already mentioned this one, to be on time. And then don't be afraid to tell your story. I guess that was a don't, but do tell your story. So yes, you want to talk about whatever the issue is, but make sure when you're in these meetings that you talk about why it's important to you, why you care. Maybe you grew up by a polluting power plant or something, tell them about it. Tell them why it's important. And then always thank them. Thank them when you're there, but it's nice to also send like a thank you follow-up email or something as well, and just kind of circle back with, I usually send a thank you, and then, we discuss this, and, we'd really like you to vote no on this bill, or, vote yes, or introduce this bill, or whatever it is you're meeting with them about. And I have a more comprehensive list, but this is just some of the basics. And then, of course, enjoy yourself. And a lot of the don'ts are just the opposite, but, it's not helpful to go in and be angry. It doesn't mean you can't be passionate, but, I think if you're angry, you're going to lose. They're not going to listen to you. Hostile, same thing. You don't want to threaten them. But you also don't want to be afraid to be assertive and tell them what you came to talk about. And sometimes that might mean interrupting them. I know we're all kind of taught not to do that, but if you only have 10 or 15 minutes and they're going on and on about something else, it's kind of a technique that some legislators use, kind of go, yeah, no, we'd like to talk more about that another time, but today we really want to talk about this, and so, because you want to make sure you get in what you came to talk about. You don't want to give them a lot of material, and that goes for in emails, just a couple pages, something front and back. And you can always get them more info later. You don't want to lose your credibility. That kind of goes back to being honest and, not making up an answer. And I always tell people, after your meeting, don't put anything on social media that you wouldn't say to them directly. It doesn't mean you can't be critical of them or what they're doing, but I always think if they were right in front of me, would I say this? I think it's a good test. All right, let's talk a little bit about what to do when working to pass or stop a bill. The first thing to do is ask, do I need a bill? A lot of people will get interested in an issue and want to have legislation introduced, and sometimes you need to just ask, do I really need a bill? Sometimes you can do things through the rulemaking process, and at least right now, that might be a little bit more friendly for some of the issues we work on. So yeah, ask that question, talk to people, see if there's something already in statute that might address it, and or that you might just tweak a little bit. Again, you want to start early on any legislation. So if you want to introduce a bill for this next session, you need to be working on it right now, and getting the ideas for the bill to whoever you want to introduce it. So yeah, get working on it. You want to know the issue and do your homework on it. And that goes for if you're trying to stop a bill as well. For getting a bill introduced, you want to find a credible sponsor. Right now, they are very reluctant to hear bills that are sponsored by Democrats in the legislature. They're the minority party. So if you can find a Republican to sponsor your bill, it's going to have a lot better chance. Sometimes that's not possible. So, just have someone who is solid and will introduce it for you. And then you want to determine if there are costs associated with whatever it is you want introduced. And, it's important to tell anyone that you're wanting to sponsor a bill, hey, here are the costs associated with this. And there are different ways you can help ascertain what the costs are. And sometimes you can raise issues with costs to help stop bills too. You want to know who is on your side relative to an issue and try and, make your coalition bigger. That is going to help you with getting any bill passage and also to stop a bill. Who's going to oppose the measure? I usually like to tell if we have a bill like, yeah, this is something that, the utilities are likely to oppose, and, give the bill sponsor a heads up. You'll want to talk to any of the agencies that might want to implement or might be involved in implementing the program. And a lot of times you have to go to the sponsor to ask them to ask for the bill to be heard, because they don't automatically put bills on agendas. And again, as I said, a lot of times with minority party bills, they never put them on the agendas. There are a lot of deadlines where bills can, die just because they weren't heard in time. So you want to watch that as well. And these are all things we can help you with if you decide to, you really want to work a bill. But I just wanted to provide a little taste of what you would do if you wanted to work a bill in the session. And then, yeah, babysit it and count the votes. And I am going to pause here because I saw Senator Kuby joined. Oh, yeah. And if you're trying to kill a bill, no bill is dead until the legislature adjourns. There are all those ways to bring them back. But Senator Kuby is here. I'm going to skip over these and come back to them. So, sorry. I have you on here. Where'd it go? There we go. So I'm going to turn this over to Senator Lauren Kuby. Senator Kuby is in her first term in the Arizona Senate. She serves on 3 committees, and prior to being in the legislature, served on the Tempe City Council. She has, as long as I've known her, which has been a while, been a champion for environmental protection, climate action and justice, democracy, is really a good voice for the people in the legislature. And so she is going to talk a little bit about why it is important to be engaged at the Arizona legislature, and maybe a little bit about what she sees coming in this upcoming session. So Senator Kuby, take it away. I don't see her now. Did she drop off? I didn't imagine it, right? She was here a minute ago. Hold on, let me double check. I saw her come in and then always glitches. If not, we'll go back to the program, but I guess I should have looked sooner. All right. Well, until I'll just stop immediately if she comes back in. Not sure what happened there. And will. Are you seeing my screen? Oh, hold on. Let me just redo this. Apologies.
There we go. While I'm not really hopeful for this next session of the legislature, I do think there are some possibilities that I could talk about where we could have some success, and I'm happy to go into more detail.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. And yeah, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why it is important for kind of average Arizonans to be engaged at the Arizona Legislature. Why should they take time to write or call or show up? Yeah.
Well, I mean, one thing that's a really significant fun fact, not so fun fact, is that there are more lobbyists in Arizona there are more utility lobbyists in Arizona than there are legislators. And so we see the utility lobbyists at every level of government really influencing city action, and more importantly, influencing city non-action, cities unwilling to take a chance and to speak up about a rate case or whatever backwards proposal the commission has come up with. So I think it's important because we hear every day from lobbyists. They schedule meetings. Sometimes you're not even aware that you're scheduled into a meeting. Sometimes I have to beat that back. I always have an open door for Sandy and other folks in the environmental movement. But we hear so much from paid lobbyists, and we don't hear enough from our citizens. We do during committee meetings, and that's important. But on a day-to-day basis, to hear from your constituents and your larger constituents in Arizona is so important. I know when I get a particularly thoughtful letter, I read that letter on the floor of the Senate. It's really important that we elevate the voices of the people that we represent. And there's nothing Republicans like less than having you elevate someone's voice on the floor. But to me, that's the most important feedback that we get. And also to see people in person, to see how it works. And I want to take this opportunity just to ask any of you if you want to shadow me in the next session. I'm coming to committee meetings, spending a day and seeing what it's like, the life of a legislator, like how you survive in a toxic environment. I would be delighted to host any of you to be a shadow for me for the day. I see a question that's come up. Let's see. Do you want to read that?
Yeah, there are several. Let's see. Who are the legislators who will be more open to environmental issues? I don't know if you want to answer that or not. I can take it if you want, but I'll let you if you would like.
Well, I mean, we can't assume, I mean, I have to be truthful. You can't assume every Democrat is going to take it forward. There are Democrats that are what I call utility Democrats. And typically there are Democrats that, take utility money in their campaign. And that's sort of how you can tell. Um, there are some legislators. I think Senator Dunn is more open to legislation related to water. I think TJ Shope is a little more open to some water legislation, even some environmental legislation. Senator Hoffman and I are actually working on a bill together that might serve to restrict ratepayer money from being used in advertising. So you never know where allies could be on certain issues. It can be kind of startling. But we do have the most right-wing legislature in the history of Arizona, and we're not going to make substantial gains on the environment, on climate change, on energy, and even on water, sadly, an area where we usually have come together in past history. But we're not going to make substantial gains until we flip the legislature.
What's the best way to contact legislators? Emails, letters, phone calls?
I personally kind of like texts. I like phone calls. I really take it. It's very important to me that I return every email, and sometimes that might take a while. And I'm less inclined maybe to return, like if it's a mass email and you get 1,000, that's different. But it's important that we hear from you. So I like all of the above. For more immediate issues, like when there's a bill coming on the floor in the next day or so, I prefer a text. And my phone number is, publicly available on the website, and it's 602-790-2156. But texts are always good for me because I'm continually looking at my texts, but maybe my emails I could be, away from my laptop.
Great. And then that they wanted to know if Republicans respond to emails that oppose their views, or do they simply ignore them? And maybe I should take that one because I have experience with that. Some of them do. And I would say they're more likely to if it's a constituent. But even with me, I'll get responses, like sometimes it will be something like, oh, hey, finally one we agree on, or something like that, kind of. But there are a number who will not too. And then this question is, how can we help you work for clean air and water and preserve natural spaces?
Well, I mean, I love seeing people come in and speak before a committee, because oftentimes, as Sandy will attest, it's often the lobbyists. And when there's some good lobbyists out there, don't get me wrong, Sandy chief among them, but it's really good to be at committee meetings. And I can't praise civic engagement beyond voting enough. They are such a good resource. They have a virtual happy hour at 4 o'clock every Sunday. I think it's not happening right now. They're having more different events focused on topics, but during the session, there's no better way to get more get updated on what's happening. And they focus a lot on environmental issues, and they'll say, if you have 5 minutes, do this. If you have 15 minutes, do this. And they also help you get signed up for requests to speak, so you can weigh in on a bill without physically going down to the legislature, which we can't always do all the time. And so and they have a newsletter too. They send out an update of what's happened the prior week. And I rely on them because, I serve on 3 committees, but I don't necessarily hear every bill and know it in depth and detail. So I rely on people I trust in civic engagement beyond voting to inform me about some of the issues.
The question is, can the Democrats propose to get rid of the strike everything amendments? We talked about the strike everything amendments earlier.
Terrible. And Sandy, you might be able to answer more about this, because I don't know if it's strictly in the rules. It is. I mean, we can change the rules when we get a majority. We can do a lot when we get a majority. But until we do, we're not going to change that, because that's a vehicle that they use to get their way on legislation that was previously rejected or not ready for prime time and missed the deadlines. So we can do a lot if we get a majority. we also have the majority of our majority who's willing to to wield that power. Sometimes you hear people say, well, if we get a majority, we should just move slowly and not do anything too crazy because we'll need to get reelected. And my point of view is like, no, we should model ourselves on Minnesota. And we get a majority, we take a big gulp and we try and remedy some of the wrongs, try and get rid of some of the worst, most egregious bills. And then we show what Democratic leadership can actually do for the people of Arizona.
Yeah, definitely. One other thing I was hoping you would address is like maybe give a little bit of a preview about what you think will be some of the key issues this session. I know it's, you're not in charge of what comes to.
There's talk and worries about the budget being severely limiting, and I understand that, but then I scratch my head and say, but we had a limited budget this year, yet we passed $15 million for the rodeo in Prescott, right? And then, yeah, our money is limited, yet we're willing to spend $1.2 billion on the school voucher scam, right? And we also have the flat tax rate that takes like over $2 billion out of our budget. So I'm always look at things askance when I hear we don't have money. What we're looking and what we're really worried about is what will happen, the impact of Medicaid cuts. We don't know what's going to happen with this current budget since it's we're in a lockdown, a shutdown now, but we don't know the impact that's going to happen. We project that people's premiums will rise 200%, and we project the closure of rural hospitals. So we're going to be in a whole world of hurt, I believe. And, we have a rainy day fund. I think Sandy's it up to 1.2 billion now, or maybe it's 1.6 billion. But if this is
over $1 billion.
Okay. If this isn't a rainy day, I don't know what the hell is a rainy day. Like we seriously need to look at sort of baseline funding of human service needs and healthcare needs, because people will die. Hospitals will close. And if you're in the rural part of Arizona, ironically, some of the same people that supported the Republicans and elect them every year, they may see the worst impacts of those cuts. And even people with really good health insurance in rural areas will see the worst impacts as hospitals close and they have to travel, 4 hours to get to a hospital in the case of a heart attack, So I think we'll be feeling the reverberations of the budget. I think developmentally disabled funding for the developmentally disabled community is a concern. For me, data centers are a huge concern because the utilities are using that as rationale to increase rates and to disproportionately increase rates for residential customers and not those big utility sucking data centers. So I'm going to be introducing a couple bills related to data centers with Aaron Marquez in the House. We know that they have said that the vouchers, private school vouchers, which are costing us over $1 billion a year, we know they said that's a sacred cow. I think there'll be some measure of accountability they'll want to introduce, just to have the greenwashing for the next election, that they did something to rein in the abuses. Like maybe they'll pass a law like you can't purchase lingerie, or you can't purchase diamond rings, which has happened. I don't think there'd be substantial reform of the ESA voucher scam, because they're running on this nationally. It's part of Project 2025 that we have private school vouchers. So, education is going to be at the forefront, as it always is, and disproportionate funding of capital projects in education. I mean, it's not going to be an easy session. And then obviously it's always politicized, but we're going to be in an election year. Warren Peterson, who's currently the Senate president, he most likely will offer that role up to someone else. He's going to be running against Chris Mays. So you're going to see a lot of sort of in-your-face veto bait bills to get the governor to veto something that will sort of make her look bad. What do you think, Sandy? How would you?
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of the bills that we saw this last session. I know Horst asked about that relative to water. And yes, we're going to see, retreads. Some that did not make it to the governor and some that did, and they just want to force her hand to veto those again. So yeah, I think
a lot of referrals to the ballot, and the governor can't veto a referral to the ballot. So we're going to see a lot of very politicized voting rights or bills taking away voting rights. We're going to see a lot of trans erasure bills, sadly. And if we don't elect a Democratic governor, all those bills that we've been rejecting and she's been vetoing are going to go quickly to passage and to signature by a Republican governor. So there's so much at stake in this next election. And that's why, in addition, I have a primary, I have a race, but I'm focused on the ADLCC, which is the group that's charged with flipping the legislature, or at least tying the legislature, because I am so sick and tired after only serving one session of playing defense. And while it's kind of fun to kill bills, with Sandy's help, we've killed some bills, but there's been bills that have gone forward, and we need to show Arizona and Arizona's working families what leadership can really mean and how we can actually improve lives and create policy that benefits the environment and benefits communities.
Great. I think some of these other questions I can take, but I wanted, one person had asked what the time, like the weekly time commitment is for being a legislator. They're concerned because there is going to be a gap in Legislative District 12 as Senator Epstein leaves and Rep. Contreras moves to run for that seat. And so I think they're worried about it, but they just wondered what the average time commitment was.
I think it's all over the place. I mean, there's legislators, I'm sure, that don't even read their emails. And then, there's some that consider it a job from January till June, and then they don't do that much. I know for me, it's pretty continual. This summer has been, I've had time to recoup and balance my life a little, but you never stop, or you should always be, representing people and showing up in places. But it can vary. There's some rural legislators, they'll come in on a Tuesday morning and they'll leave on a Thursday. And they're not seen around the place. And granted, they have homes that are far away. I get that. So it really varies. But most of the Democrats I know in the Senate are very hardworking, give up a lot of time, and are right now in the throes of planning legislation, going to conferences, meeting with stakeholders, meeting with constituents, and keeping people informed. But it's hard to give an answer like 40 hours a week. For me, it's more than 40 hours. And you can talk to my husband, and he actually thought that, after June, that I would have all this free time and not really have to do anything until January. I don't know. There's no way I told him that when I was considering running, but he seems to sometimes think that it's not a job until January. And that's definitely not true.
Yeah, that is definitely not true. We just had a couple of other things that we were going to cover, just like ways that people can sign up for legislative updates and stuff. So, and I know some people are interested in helping to support you with the data center work and stuff. And so, I can share with people how to get in touch with you. And of course, we'll be supporting it. So if they sign up for the legislative updates, they'll get that information. But if you had any parting words, you're welcome to stay on, but I just wanted to move to kind of the last few things. Yeah.
Well, I've been working with some fellow legislators and council members across the country and Ukrainian elected officials and civil society folks on data centers. So it's all in my mind. So I did a bunch of research, and staff did. I just want to leave you with this salient fact that we spend $19 million a year supporting the data center industry, these server farms, because we exempt all their equipment from paying taxes for their equipment purchases. That's $19 million a year. And think what we could do with $19 million a year. I'll just leave you with that thought. It was alarming to me. So when you hear legislators say, there's no money for this, there's no money for that, it's like, our budget is a statement of our values. And right now our values are for big corporations, for billionaires, and not for your working family in Arizona. And I'm sick about the lack of investment in our renewable clean energy economy. And hoping that we'll flip the legislature, but I'm also hoping we can put forward some minimal improvements and reforms this coming year, especially related to water and to data centers. And I thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all the work you do. And yeah, and thanks for joining us tonight. We'll be in touch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, folks, I'm gonna kind of go back to the program. Let's see. I need to get to the right slide if I can. There we go. And I'll try to run through this quickly because I know you all had some more questions that I think I can answer. Yeah, this is where I was. So I just wanted to make you aware of the legislature's website, and if people want to stay on, I can show you the website live and what you can find there. But I would just encourage you to, it's azleg.gov, and there's just tons of info on here. This is where you can, find bills. There's a tab for bills, or you can just put the bill number if you know it up here. But if you click on here, you can search. There's a drop down, and then you can search by topic, or by bill number, or however you want to search. And that is also how you can find out about strike everything amendments. That if you click on a bill, it'll tell you whether there was a strike everything amendment on it. You can also see strike everything amendments on agendas. So I know that was one of the questions someone had asked, is how do you know when there's a strike everything amendment? So I just wanted to add that. Anyway, there's also this request to speak link on here. And if you click on that, if you don't have an account, you can create an account. I already have an account, but yeah, and then you can create an account. If it's your first time creating an account, someone or you will have to activate it down at the legislature, and it's just a matter of signing in once, and then it's activated. And from then on, you can sign in on this request to speak account from your phone or your home computer. And you can register your support or opposition to bills, and can also sign up to speak if you actually want to speak on them. And again, Lauren mentioned this, but Civic Engagement Beyond Voting has a whole program on how to use requests to speak, and they are also willing to help you set up accounts. So I used to always go through this in detail, and then I saw their program and I'm like, well, this is, I don't need to do this because they're doing it and they're doing it really well. So I usually refer people to that. But again, if you need help, I'm always willing to help someone get their accounts started. These are just a few resources. I don't expect you to remember these. I just wanted to let you know that there are a number of resources available online, including on the Sierra Club's website, where we post our legislative updates. We also have a tracker that we do during the session as well. And, I can send you these slides with this information. Environmental Day at the Capitol is our lobby day. We hold every year in coalition with a bunch of other groups. This year, it's going to be Wednesday, February 11th. It ends up being pretty much all day, but you don't have to stay all day if you don't have all day. What we do is we have team leaders who set up meetings with legislators. Usually you meet with your own legislators or at least one. There's tabling, there's speakers, and it's really kind of a very nice day. We do have an RSVP set up for that. And it is helpful if you RSVP so we can actually get you in to a team with other people in your district and also be able to plan for lunch and stuff like that. Sierra Club also puts out weekly legislative updates. Again, there's a link to sign up or you can just let me know and I can sign you up. They provide a way for you to take action via email. I usually have a list of bills you can sign up for on requests to speak. That list has gotten kind of long because there's so many bad bills, but so I'm trying to figure out if I can reduce that a little bit because I feel like maybe it's a little too much for a lot of people. And I give you information on how to watch or speak at committee hearings because I let you know what's coming up that week, what bills you might want to look at in which committee hearings. And the other thing I wanted to mention is another important part of being engaged with the legislature is accountability. So you want to, make sure you're holding legislators accountable during the session and beyond. If they're doing a good job, let them know. And they got an A, you can tell them you notice on a report card. If they didn't, then you can also let them know you noticed that and ask them to do better. So we heard from Lauren a little bit about what to expect. So I'm not going to go into that too much, but I just wanted to let you know they always start the second Monday in January. So this session will start on January 12th. We don't know when it will end. They used to try to limit them to 100 days, but pretty much that has been out the window, and they end sometime in June. The governor delivers the state of the state, and then Lauren talked about the budget, and we expect a lot of anti-democracy measures, water bills, including on the Colorado River, and anti-solar and wind measures again. We already had that, so we want you to join us and speak up. And I will stop the share so I can answer your questions. I know there were some in the chat. I do remember one of them, and that was, I think Representative Matt Grass told some constituents that the legislature can't require renewable energy because that's the Corporation Commission's purview. And he is wrong about that, as he is about so many things. First of all, they could always require it for Salt River Project because Salt River Project is not regulated by the Arizona Corporation Commission. But second of all, there was Arizona Supreme Court decision a number of years ago that basically said that that allowed for the legislature to be engaged more on requiring renewable energy because they did not consider it to be within the sole rate-making authority of the Arizona Corporation Commission. So Representative Grass is wrong, and I can get you more information on that if you'd like. Let's see. And I can also share your thank yous from the chat with Lauren. Yes, I'll probably send it to you, the slides as a PDF just because it's easier because it's not as big. Going back to see. Yeah, and I will let you know about the data center bills. If you sign up for the legislative updates, it will be easier for me to do that, but I will be happy to do that. Horst, I already answered your question on the water bills. I answered that one. think I answered the strike everything. Oh, and Kay, you had asked if there are specific criteria for a lobbyist as opposed to an advocate. And I don't really consider, like, if you're a member of the public, I don't really consider it to be any different. There is a legal definition of lobbyists, so like I officially represent the Sierra Club as a lobbyist. So I have to be registered with the Secretary of State's office and I have to file quarterly reports telling them how much I spend on legislators, which isn't very much. And there are there is a legal definition, but for you all, representing yourself, you can call yourself an advocate, you can call yourself a volunteer lobbyist. I don't see any real difference in that. I think we addressed, I'm just trying to go back and get the oldest questions and then come back down. Oh, and Kay, one other thing I was going to say about legislators who are more open to environmental issues is I feel like both the minority leader in the House and Senate are really strong champions for environmental protection. And that helps us a lot with those caucuses. So that is helpful. So that's Senator Sundaration and Representative De Los Santos. All right, well, if there's anything else that I missed, maybe you can bring it up again. Has the governor stated that environmental programs will be affected by federal funding cuts and deregulation of NEPA? I don't know if the governor has stated, but the programs in Arizona have already been affected by federal budget cuts, including at the Department of Environmental Quality, where they get federal funding for implementing some programs like under the Clean Air Act, for example. So programs have already been affected by those cuts. Let's see. All right. Are there any questions that I missed or any other questions that people have? And if you can always just come off mute if you have a question. Okay. Well, again, thank you for joining. Sorry for that little glitch in the middle. And if you want to stay up to date, encourage you to sign up for our legislative updates. You can do that by going to our website, but also if you send me an email, I'll put my email in the chat again because I think that slide is gone. And then also leading up to Environmental Day at the Capitol, we'll be announcing our legislative priorities. That'll probably be in the first week in January. And then we'll be having a series of virtual programs on issues that we'll be working on at the Capitol. So we'll have one on water, for example. There'll be one on energy and climate, one on democracy, and I think we're talking about doing at least one other. And that's an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about the issues. And if we have any bill numbers at that time, we'll share those. Legislators will start introducing bills on November 15th. Those are bills that are pre-filed. And then that week of January 12th, they will start introducing them in earnest, a large number. So just trying to think if there's anything else I forgot in there. Probably I'll think of something after we end. But if you think of something later, don't hesitate to reach out with your questions. And I will also make the same offer that Senator Kuby made. If you know, we encourage you to come and participate in Environmental Day at the Capitol, but also if there are other days that you are interested in coming to the Capitol, let me know, and I can figure out a good day where you might come with me to a committee and see how the committees operate, and then maybe in the future you would want to actually testify in the committees. So I'll just make that offer as well. And I think with that, we'll probably wrap up almost right on time, I guess, unless anyone has a last question. All right. Well, thanks so much for hanging in there, and we'll be in touch. Talk to y'all soon. Bye.